Here is an overview of learning disabilities, ADHD, and emotional disabilities. Students with learning disabilities differ tremendously. Each child is unique in their own way and has strengths and weaknesses in different areas. Students with learning disabilities may have difficulty functioning cognitively, academically, socially, and/or behaviorally. Students with learning disabilities may have cognitive weaknesses in one or more areas, including attention, perception, memory, and processing. Attention. Some students can have difficulty attending to tasks at hand when they are in an overstimulating environment. While they may have a reading material they are to be reading, there may be extraneous stimuli that's distracting them from doing their assigned work. Students with attention difficulties may get easily distracted in their environment from visuals and sounds around them. Perception. According to Friend, 2018, perception does not pertain to whether a student sees or hears, but rather to how the student's brain interprets what is seen or heard and how it acts on it. Symptoms of this may include difficult spatial orientation and judgment, difficulty with the distinction between left and right, large motor activity difficulties, and etc. Memory. Some students may have difficulty retaining memory. This could be in terms of short and/or long-term memory, and it all depends on the student. And finally, information processing. Some students may have difficulty processing information or thinking about newly learned concepts. Some students may have difficulty connecting and applying newly learned information to their schema. Students with learning disabilities most often show difficulty in their academics. Academic areas that students can experience difficulties are, but not limited to, reading, spoken language, written language, mathematics, or any combination of the above. Reading. Students with learning disabilities often struggle with reading. Students can struggle with phonological awareness, meaning the ability to make letter and corresponding sound connections. Students can also struggle with oral fluency. Students who struggle with oral fluency often read very choppy and have long, awkward pauses between words or phrases. Additionally, students can struggle with comprehension, decoding of words, and students who struggle with comprehension may not have difficulty with the actual decoding of words, but they might struggle with asking and answering questions about the text. Students may be able to fluently read a story, but then they may not be able to engage in a discussion about the text. Math. Students who struggle in math may show difficulty in computational skills, different math concepts, and/or problem solving. Students may have trouble retaining basic math facts or understanding fundamental computational skills, which then basically transfers to most of the categories taught in math. Some students may struggle with only specific concepts, including measurement, probability, geometry, fractions, etc. One concept may come very easily, while another may not. Finally, another area of difficulty could be in the problem-solving domain. Students may struggle being able to read the problem itself and/or identifying the underlying concepts of the problem at hand. Spoken language. Students have difficulty with spoken language, and they may experience difficulty in one of the four areas: phonology, morphology, syntax, or pragmatics. Phonology is the ability to use correct sounds to form words. Morphology is the study of meaningful units of language. This includes understanding the basic concept of phonics. For example, the ending ed on words indicates the past tense. Syntax is the meaning of words or phrases, and pragmatics is being able to orally interact with others. And finally, written language. Students who struggle with written language could have difficulties in various different areas. Some students may have difficulty with fine motor skills involved in holding a pencil or creating the correct letter formation, while other students may have difficulty with spelling or overall mechanics, including but not limited to capitalization, punctuation, or sentence structure. Some students with disabilities struggle regulating their social and emotional characteristics. Because of this, it may be difficult to form connections with peers and perform the work in place. Students with disabilities are known to have lower self-esteem than their average peers. Students with disabilities may not have the complete understanding of social competence. Social competence is the inability to interact appropriately in social situations. For example, a child could be listening to a conversation between two students about an argument and interject that they're getting ice cream for dinner. The child may not know that it was not an appropriate time to join in and that their comment didn't necessarily fit in with the topic of conversation currently being discussed. Additionally, students may show lack of motivation. Most students with disabilities are not intrinsically motivated, meaning they're not self motivated to learn, but rather they're extrinsically motivated, meaning they will respond to motivation for a bribe or something in return. Often, students with disabilities form what is called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is when students give up on a task before they even try. This could be due to trying and failing too many times, or knowing that they'll receive support from an adult if they immediately give up. Students with learning disabilities may show behavioral issues. It is important to note that not all students with disabilities do, but there is a trend of behaviors shown in some students. It is important to note that behavioral problems could be a result of the disability itself or a result of frustration due to an underlying concept that was previously discussed. Students may show behaviors due to three different deficits: skill deficits, performance deficits, or self controlled deficits. Students may act out due to the fact that they don't know or understand a skill. They may act out because they don't understand the appropriateness of a skill, or they may not be able to control themselves in a certain situation, therefore causing a lowered academic progress. Based on the information presented about students with learning disabilities, here are two of the many instructional strategies general and special education teachers could implement into their classroom. First, teachers could incorporate social lessons into their curriculum. By choosing appropriate grade level texts, teachers can teach important social aspects like bullying, accepting others, etc., through the reading of books and discussing the story with their students. By doing this, not only will the students with difficulty in social competence get practice with these scenarios, but their grade level peers will gain a better understanding in how to interact with students with disabilities as well. Second, teachers can provide students with academic checklists. By doing so, students who have difficulty with their cognitive processing will have a visual cue to refer to when they're working on academic or routine tasks without having to tap into their short or long-term memory. An example of this could be a writing checklist to help students remember all of the important mechanics. Another example would be a morning routine chart to help assist the students unpack and prepare for the school day. This will help students handle the important tasks in school without having to stress about recalling all of this important information from their memory. Like students with learning disabilities, students with ADHD also have difficulty functioning cognitively, academically, socially, and/or behaviorally. Students with ADHD, also known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, have difficulties cognitively. According to Friend, 2018, it is not that students with ADHD can't pay attention, it is that they cannot regulate where their attention is directed, how often it switches to other areas, or how to redirect their attention when it wanders. Students with ADHD experience cognitive difficulties in one or more of the following four categories: working memory, self-directed speech, control of emotions and motivation, and reconstitution. Working memory. Students with ADHD often have trouble recalling situations due to an obstructed working memory. For example, if a teacher redirects a student for calling out during a lesson, many students would probably think before calling out and raise their hand. A student with ADHD may not consider the recent interaction with the teacher and may call out again. Self-directed speech. Self-directed speech, also known as self-talk, is what students use to follow directions, reflect on their thinking, and problem solve. Students with ADHD have difficulty performing this mental task and often find themselves wandering into other thoughts during instructional time. Control of emotions and motivation. Students with ADHD often have difficulty controlling their emotions. Most students, when faced with a difficult or challenging task, may feel overwhelmed, but know how to take a deep breath and continue with the task. Students with ADHD may become so overwhelmed with stress or a specific emotion that they may not be able to come down from it and therefore may act out in the classroom. Finally, reconstitution. When teachers are delivering instruction, they can often refer to topics and assume that students will make the connections to previously learned tasks. Teachers often do not need to directly teach every example of a new skill, but students with ADHD do not have the luxury of being able to recall and connect key points. ADHD is not directly related to an intellectual disability and therefore leads to a diverse range of student academic ability. Some students with ADHD perform well in the classroom to the point where they may be gifted or above grade level, while others may perform below the target range. Not surprisingly, there appears to be a correlation between the severity of symptoms of ADHD and the achievement. The more severe the symptoms, the greater the negative impact on their school performance. Students with ADHD often experience difficulty with social functioning in multiple environments, including school, home, and many others. Students with ADHD may have low self esteem due to knowledge of their troubles in school. Additionally, like students with learning disabilities, students with ADHD may have difficulty creating lasting relationships with their grade level peers due to their inability to judge appropriateness in specific social situations. Students with ADHD exhibit a variety of different behaviors, including restlessness, inability to focus, failure to attend to details, excessive talking, task avoidance, and constantly being out of their seat. Two instructional strategies that you could implement into your classroom are technology integration and kinesthetic aids. Students with ADHD can utilize technology in a variety of different ways. Teachers could create self paced timers to keep students alert about the time limits, create lists of tasks, allow students to take brain breaks, and much more. By giving students this technology, they may receive possible aid in an area where they are struggling academically, or it may be a motivator to stay on task and be used as a behavioral reward. Students who are very restless in class may benefit from having a material to help them get out their so called jiggles. By providing students with something like a stretch band for their chair, a weighted lap pad, a fidget cube, or a standing desk, students may be able to move while learning. This will not only encourage participation from the student, but may also eliminate distractions that may have otherwise occurred without those aids. Once again, students with emotional behavioral disorders, also known as EBD, may have difficulty in one of the following four areas listed below. Students labeled with EBD do not necessarily have direct correlations to a specific cognitive ability. Some students may be gifted while others may be on or below grade level. EBD is not considered an intellectual disability, and therefore, students with this label can have a wide range of academic and cognitive abilities. Students labeled with EBD unfortunately have significant academic difficulties to the point where retention and dropping out are high risks. It is thought that the emotional disability goes hand in hand with the academic difficulties. For example, students with extreme emotional distress will not be able to focus heavily on their academics. On the opposite hand, students who do struggle with their academics could also lead to emotional issues. Obviously, considering the name, students with emotional behavioral disabilities have extreme emotional difficulties. The behaviors of EBD students are often indicators of their emotions. Students with EBD could struggle emotionally with anxiety, anger, or depression. When considering the social functioning of an emotional behavioral child, it is easy to make the connection that these students have a significant difficulty making and maintaining relationships. Many of these students grow up in a home where the adult figures are not demonstrating appropriate behavior, and therefore these students do not know appropriate social competence. It is the teacher's job to model and teach the appropriate social skills to these students. Students with EBD have varying behaviors, so much so that it's almost impossible to come up with a distinct list to reference. While the behaviors of these students may not necessarily differ from students with disabilities, their behaviors are more frequent, intense, and have a more negative impact on the student learning. Students with emotional behavioral disabilities could exhibit their behavior in two ways: internalized or externalized. Students with internalized behaviors often keep things bottled up inside them. Sometimes the common characteristics are depressed or sad feelings, constant crying or sad behaviors, frequent engagement in repetitive or useless actions, constant headache complaints, talking about suicide, or possible showing effects of physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. Students with externalized behaviors often act out and are seen as dangerous due to their interactions towards their peers and their teachers. Some examples of these behaviors are, but not limited to, excessive arguing, non compliant to requests, lack of self control, verbal or physical aggression towards their peers, or patterns of tantrums. Two ideas of instructional strategies that teachers could implement with emotional behavioral disability students are social function lessons and student visual reflective aids. To help teach those social skills that not all students may have, teachers could once again do a lesson with a book, have the guidance counselor do a lesson for the class, or even send the student to a guidance counselor for a small student support group. This will help those students who are not getting those model behaviors have a better understanding how to act while they're at school, and they'll have an opportunity to engage in a discussion about it. Another strategy teachers could use is a visual reflective aid. Teachers can use some sort of a visual for the student to utilize to show their feelings throughout the day. Students can use a chip or a dry erase marker to document their feelings, and the teacher can be informed on whether the student needs a break or if they're doing okay. Some examples of these are stoplights, smiley faces, or a color spectrum with the key for feelings. When the teacher sees that a student is feeling frustrated or is in the red, they can send them away for a break to try to prevent some behaviors that may come out. Lastly, identifying students with emotional behavior disorders includes several steps. First, the general education teacher needs to begin by implementing a behavior system into their class that pertains to that particular student. By doing this, the teacher can see if this will make progress, and if not, they can collect valuable data. Additionally, response to intervention or RTI interventions will be implemented in the classroom, or a pre-referral team may meet to discuss the child. If all of these attempts are unsuccessful in making progress, a referral will be made to determine whether an emotional behavioral disorder exists. To assess a student for EBD, several steps are then put into place. First, a teacher must complete a rating scale to show the relevance of the student's behaviors. Additionally, cognitive ability and achievement are also measured. Next, systematic observations will be conducted in the classroom, lunchroom, specials classes, recess, etc. Adults are really going to be looking to see the students' behaviors in a variety of different environments and settings. In addition to those assessments, a few other assessments are also completed, including a family history and the student developmental history. A psychologist or a counselor may also interview the child, and medical information will be obtained from their family practice. Additionally, a strength-based assessment will be given to find areas of the student's confidence and lack thereof. This will help people determine possible areas of triggers for the behaviors. All of this information was retrieved from the Friends 2018 Special Education Contemporary Perspectives for School Professionals textbook.